I call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 36 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Official Languages. Pursuant to Standing Number Order 1083F, the committee is meeting on the study of the federal support for French language or bilingual post-secondary institutions in a minority situation. I have a few words to tell you. Donc, vous rappelez que d'abord, toutes les observations.
First of all interventions by committee members and witnesses must pass through the chair. Also, all participants must wear a headset with a microphone. Today, we are kicking off this study for a total of 4 sittings. This study is entitled Federal Support for French Language or Bilingual Post-Secondary Institutions in a Minority Situation. So I would like to, first of all, welcome our witnesses. We have the Honorable Minister Mélanie Joly, Minister of Official Languages. Welcome, Minister. She is accompanied by her colleagues from the Department of Canadian Heritage. With us, we have Mr. Denis Racine. He is Director General at the Official Languages Branch. And Julie Boyer, Assistant Deputy Minister at Official Languages, Heritage and Regions. Minister, you have 7.5 minutes for your speech, after which committee members will ask you questions. The timer is ready. Over to you, Minister. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good day, everyone. I hope that you're well. I'm pleased to see you. Thank you, Charlie, for that little song to get our meeting started. I'm pleased to be supported here by 2 of the extraordinary public servants that I have the privilege to work with. Julie Boyer, she is Assistant Deputy Minister, as our colleague Mr. Dubourg mentioned. Julie, I think this is the first time you've been with us at the committee, so thank you for being part of this. And Denis, who has much experience with the committee, and I have had the good fortune to appear with him many times.
I join you, and of course, I'm here to answer your questions. Et donc, je tiens à rappeler l'importance.
So I would like to reiterate the importance of this committee. I have testified before you a number of times. And it's so important to understand how we can protect, preserve, and promote the vitality of minority language situations across Canada, always by strengthening our official languages. So your studies inform and enlighten us on crucial issues, so I am very pleased to appear before you for your study on the measures that the Government of Canada can take to administer federal funds. And the study also on the positive measures taken by federal institutions regarding post-secondary education for official language minority communities, or OLMCs. Although post-secondary education falls under provincial and territorial jurisdiction, as you all know, the Government of Canada has been supporting provincial and territorial efforts in education for over 50 years. We have established bilateral agreements to promote minority language education and second language instruction. And the administration of federal funds is rigorously monitored. In particular, our government places great importance on its responsibility to support OLMCs.
To be there, side by side, our official languages minorities. Et nous sommes toujours tenus debout pour...
We have always stood up to protect Francophone minorities, and we recognize that post-secondary institutions are key to the vitality of our linguistic minority communities. We are committed to taking action to assist the development of these communities, encourage bilingualism, modernize the Official Languages Act, or the OLA, and to offer a modern vision of Canada's linguistic duality. In 2020, the speech from the throne outlined our intention to strengthen the OLA by taking into account the reality of French and the North American context. Budget 2021 proposes nearly $500 million in investments to promote French and improve bilingualism, including $121.3 million over 3 years, starting in 2021-22, to provide quality post-secondary education in the minority language in Canada. Finally, Our public reform document, which I had the opportunity to present to you in April, sets out our vision. We believe that all citizens should see themselves reflected in the objectives of the OLA and that our two official languages should be on more equal footing, so there should be substantive equality between French and English. Our government has a responsibility to ensure that everyone can learn, speak, and live in French in this country, just as they can, of course, in English, and education plays an essential role in making this happen from preschool to post-secondary education. I would like to give you a few details. Each year, our government invests $235 million through bilateral agreements between Canada and the provinces and territories, which are guided by the Protocol for Agreements for Minority Language Education and Second Language Instruction. That is a very long title for the protocol. We often call it the PLOE. Approximately $149 million are allocated to minority language education and $86 million to second language instruction. The general framework I'm describing includes positive measures to foster post-secondary education in minority communities. Each agreement includes the province or territory's action plan, which projects supported at each level of education. It is the provinces and the territories that determine which projects are funded and the amounts allocated to each level, preschool to post-secondary. However, as of 2019-2020, the agreements include strengthened accountability measures and the requirement to consult with stakeholders. They also include a requirement to report periodically on the activities undertaken and their impact on communities. Federal funding for post-secondary education under these agreements is approximately $40 million per year, which represents about 17% of the total education envelope. Our programs also provide financial support to not-for-profit education organizations in communities. For example, to carry out projects and cover operating costs. Provinces and territories can also receive funding for projects that address emerging needs, for teacher recruitment and retention initiatives, or for infrastructure projects. All of these positive measures are important because educational institutions are essential to the vitality, development, and the future of Francophone communities across the country. We understand that post-secondary institutions are one of the keys to the vitality of our minority language communities. The situation at Laurentian University concerns me and concerns us. That is also why we are in. This is also true for the Saint Jean campus in Alberta. And we are solution-oriented. We will work with the province of Ontario to ensure there is a post-secondary institution for Francophones in Northern Ontario. And today I sent a letter to my Ontarian counterparts to make sure that $500 million will be put aside to find a solution for the Northern Ontario Francophone community when it comes to post-secondary education. We have always stood up to protect Francophone minorities, and we always will. And of course, I look forward to answering your questions on this subject. And Julie and Denis will also be here to answer your questions. So, Mr. Chair, Mr. Dubourg, I am here to answer your questions and to kick off the conversation.
Thank you very much for your statement, Minister, and we will start with the Vice Chair of the committee. Mr. Blaney, you have 6 minutes. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thanks and welcome, Minister. It's always a pleasure to have you, especially when you have financial proposals to help with the situation that we're looking at. We are looking at post-secondary institutions, but it's really the Laurentian University, or as Ontarians say, Laurentian University, that is of concern to us. So you've announced $5 million. Can you give us more details about the parameters? We know that the community is requesting a moratorium to allow them to make a transition to the Francophone institutions. Now, are there any conditions attached to your $5 million, or can these funds be used right now to tackle the issue in the northern part of Ontario? Thank you very much, Mr. Blaney. Your question is very relevant, and it is related to two conversations I've had today with many members of the community, but I've have been discussing this with members for months now, stakeholders, unions of teacher union, teachers, students, members of the Francophone community, people who are involved with the Sudbury University, like Mr. Ron Casa, for example, or also with the Franco-Ontarian University, like Canada. What we need right now are actually two things. An interim solution, that is, what can we actually do for programs which have been cut and that were sent outside of the north of Ontario? I'm thinking about the midwife programs, for example, that are offered in French. And the other question is, what can we do in the long term to find a solution for and with Francophones? Now, this solution right now needs to emerge from the community, and the community needs to have these discussions, and we might then find a solution offered by the community. Is it the University of Sudbury, or do we create a cooperation between the Sudbury University and the network of the Francophone, so part of Northern Ontario? Now, if they need money to build this project, we'll be able to help them. So that's the idea, but of course we need to do that with the government of Ontario, because establishing a university is done through a bill from Ontario, and my colleagues will need to support this type of a project, not only from a legislative point of view, but also from a practical stance. So you're saying, so in other words, the 5 million, so are you saying I give 5 million if the government of Ontario gives 5 million, or you say, no, that's our constitutional priority, it's important for us, we're being leaders here, and as soon as the community has a concrete plan, we will be in a position to support them? Well, of course, we need to work with the province. We needed to make sure that we had an agreement, 50-50 with regard to funding, and at the time we said we put the money on the table and we will make sure to convince the province of Ontario. We will be working with the community, and after many negotiations and discussions, we were able to come as far. Now, there are many expectations because there is a process with creditors. Well, people are expecting to see what's going to happen with Laurentian University. However, teachers have lost their jobs, and students have lost the possibility to study in French in the Sudbury region. So we said, that's enough. We put the money on the table. Things need to move. Well, you're saying you put 5 million and you expect, are you going to demand that Ontario will match your amount, or are you ready to commit right away for Francophone communities? We're already committed, as I said. We put aside 5 million, but we expect that Ontario matches that. So it's a condition. It's conditional. That wasn't quite clear in the letter as such. What we hope is that the money be available for the community. And of course, it's another jurisdiction. We hope that they will participate, but the federal government shouldn't wait for the provincial government to help minorities which are in an urgent situation. Mr. Blaney, I invite you to talk to your colleagues in Ontario. I'm convinced that they will have a very open ear to their conservative colleagues in the House of Commons. Well, probably they also will listen to you, but my role is to make sure that the federal government plays a leadership role, and you are our minister, not heritage. I'm not minister responsible for official languages, so this is why it is important for us that the government, federal government, play a leadership role. So 5 million, a conditional amount, so that's still not clear. So we want to make sure that the funds are being received by the community. We would have liked to hear that the 5 million are unconditional. You've talked about a critical situation, and of course you can count on the provincial government's support, but it seems that this amount has been voted. Now, out of these 5 million, is it true that the official language program did not have any increase since 2009? No, that's not correct. Well, this is what I see in the report. So the federal government's funding has not increased since 2009, and that's the report of the Official Language Commissioner. It's a recent report. Well, 15 seconds, please. Well, we increased the program. This program was increased in 2019, 60 million, so this can be confirmed by others. So next 6 minutes, Mr. Lefebvre. Please open your microphone. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Minister, for being with us today. You're always available, and it's very much appreciated having the opportunity to speak to you. I'm only 1.5 kilometers from Laurentian University, and this is one of the reasons also we are here. And I would like to speak about the situation over there, and especially look at how the issue evolved and what we were able to do at the federal level. So my question is the following. When have you heard about this difficult financial situation at the Laurentian University? Well, I would say it was pretty much at the same time as everyone else, personally, when the news came out. However, Paul, you got in touch with my office in December because there had been a request by Laurentian University. There was the possibility that some money would be lost because of COVID. And at that point, my office decided to get in touch with the government of Ontario. That was in January, telling them that Laurentian University has a problem. If you want us to change the fund allocation through the agreement, we would be in a position to do that. And I would like to point out that many universities that had concerns because there were less foreign students, there were more issues also, related to the fact that students were only participating virtually. So the request from Laurentian University seemed to be a request that was quite reasonable because that was an issue that was the same elsewhere in the country. Now, what happened was that, and I think that was at the end of January, my office got in touch with, that is, the department got in touch with the Department of Post-Secondary Education in Ontario, and they did not receive any response. And in February, we learned that Laurentian University was trying to seek arrangements with regard to the Companies Creditor Arrangement Act. Now, we're looking for solutions, that is clear. However, I would like you, it's probably not very well known, how much is the federal government giving to the Laurentian University through the bilateral agreements? Now, you heard me saying that 253 million are paid out to Ontario over a 3-year period. It's the greatest envelope. And when you look at New Brunswick, it's 98 million. So that's quite a difference, a significant difference. And it's the government of Ontario that decides where the funds are being allocated. Another area we might be of help, of course, is when there are infrastructure projects. Here again, the government of Ontario says we want to give money to the University of Sudbury, for example, and then they ask us whether we want to participate, and that's what we did. So we gave 1.5 million to the Laurentian University for the renovation of the Alphonse Raymond building. But that was because there was 1.5 million being paid out by the province. So one of the things which is not very well known, and my colleague Blaney mentioned it, so why don't we just give the money directly to the Laurentian University or to the community groups, like with the University of Sudbury, who have a plan? So can't we fund in post-secondary institutions directly? everywhere or anywhere in Canada. So how are these funds being transferred? Well, there's a reason why there is no Department of Education, because it's the Constitution that states that education is the provincial jurisdiction. So the only jurisdiction that we have to intervene is at the level of official languages, because language rights needs to be protected, and the federal government plays a role through its power to invest money. So this is when we can decide that in order to protect language rights, to support the vitality of Francophones in the north of Ontario, we need strong institutions like post-secondary institutions. So we can then transfer funds, but they need to transit through the province. Just to confirm, it's very important here. Now, if the Laurentian University had asked directly whether you could fund them, for example, had asked for a loan, what would have been the answer? Well, we would have said, no problem. We're going to call the Government of Ontario to find a solution, because this is what we did with the Franco-Ontarian University. And it's actually in putting pressure, political pressure, on our vis-a-vis, because this is when we can push the Government of Ontario to respect this vision that we have of language rights, which is very important and that we need to defend in these circumstances. Thank you. You're on mute? Oh, yes, that's, I was on mute again. Thank you very much. And I wanted to announce that Mr. Beaulieu now will be speaking for the next 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'd like to greet and welcome Minister Joly. I would like to look at the more global perspective. Do you know the principle of institutional complementarity? Yes, I have a rough idea of what you're talking about. Well, it's not. It's Raymond Breton, a sociologist, who says the more a linguistic community has a strong developed network of institutions, the less likely the community will be assimilating and will be vital.
According to this principle, Frédéric Lacroix, a Quebec author, has researched the topic, and he thinks that since French speakers make up 80% of the population, normally to ensure the survival of the French, they should be able to assimilate the immigrants. And he thinks that approximately 90% of the funding for post-secondary institutions should be given to French institutions in Quebec. And the same principle was invoked in the Montfort Hospital case. I don't know how you can explain this, but already in Quebec, the government gives approximately 30% of its budget to English institutions, whereas they're only 30% of the population. And in Ontario, the French speakers make up 4% of the population and receive 3% of the budget. They are already not in a favorable position given the budget. And as regards the federal funding going to the English-speaking university or institution, he calculated that 34%, $363 million are given every year to English universities. And the French universities only get 61.9% of the funding. How can you explain this? Do you think that this is equitable? And in Quebec, and elsewhere, post-secondary French-speaking institutions are under finance. I don't know where you got these figures. The two universities who got funding from us are the University of Laval and the Bishop University. They are the only two universities. English, no, because Laval is not an English university. Those are funds that are given because they are a priority for the government of Quebec. We do not impose our priorities to the government in Quebec. It is the government in Quebec that says what it wants to prioritize. But as regards Quebec, I am very proud of all the universities there, and it means that we are able to have an extraordinary city in Montreal. We have researchers that are amongst the best in the world. We have hospitals, university hospitals that enable us to have the best care in the world. I'm very proud. But do you think that the funding of French establishments should be proportional to the demographic weight of the French population? When we're talking about university, there's the whole issue of research chairs, and this is not something we deal with. What we deal with is, in fact, a post-secondary education as such for official languages community, and I'm talking about projects dealing with the universities in Quebec. Of course, we would have to help more the French-speaking communities who are in a minority situation. And this is why in the speech from the throne, we said we recognized that we had to do more to protect the French language. And this is why I see I do not have much time left. I'm sorry. Of course, we agree. We want that the Acadian communities get enough funds to be able to be flowering communities and to increase. And we also want that in Quebec, the decline of French be stopped, because if it declines or goes on in Quebec, it will be even worse elsewhere in Canada. So as regards the Official Languages Act, positive measures must always be done with the approval of Quebec and after consulting Quebec. Is that so? You have 10 seconds to answer, Madam Minister. Well, I will be pleased to continue my consultation with Quebec on this. I have spoken to the Minister of Intergovernmental Relations, the Minister for Justice, and other ministers within the cabinet in Quebec, and those discussions are continuing. Thank you very much. For the next 6 minutes, Mr. Boulris will have the floor. Mr. Boulris. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Madam Minister, for having come today. We appreciate that. As regards the Laurentian University, I have a question. The needs are approximately $100 million. If I understood you correctly, you're offering approximately $5 million, which is far from enough. How can you really help this university with only 5% of what it needs? Of course, the Laurentian University must go on with its process. This process is, it's not normal that a public institution should find itself in such a situation that it would have to be in a bankruptcy situation. It's not normal to let a university go like this. It's not the first time that it happens. You know it. You are a member for Quebec like me. In Montreal, the UQAM was almost bankrupt, and the government helped the university. So 5 million is only a start. It's only to help the university start again. Yes, of course. So it's a start, and we will have to do more and go further. And all the best if you've done started to act. But what are you going to do about the Campus Saint-Jean in Edmonton? Because this is very concerning. There is a very real danger of losing programs in French that cannot be replaced. There's nothing else there. Oh, this is very shocking because the government in Alberta has decided to go before the courts, not to give its part. What we offered for the Campus Saint-Jean is still on the table. So I can push the government in Alberta. I think it's terrible. The university and the community, the French community, be obliged to go before the court, use its money in order to defend its rights. During that time, the government of Alberta is spending money to contest the rights of the French community. I don't understand. Well, I can see that because the federal government also is contesting the right of the native people who want to be compensated. But I think you should do your part to save the Campus Saint-Jean. There's 121 million more for the post-secondary institution. So it is, of course, it is sure that we will be able to help at the Campus Saint-Jean. As the Minister for Official Languages, it is not true that I will be allow this violation of linguistic rights. Today, we've seen a report of the Commissioner of Official Languages about the French situation in the federal institution. You have tabled some kind of white paper. I personally tabled 3 bills in the House of Commons, and I think that you have never tabled anything. Do you need my help to table a bill? Well, of course, I want to have a bill. I will do everything to be able to table something in 2021, and I'll be pleased to collaborate with you in this because it is very important to have this bill. Yes, it would be very important, but when do you think you will table a bill to modernize the Official Languages Act? We've seen in the report from the commissioners of official languages today that the number of complaints has tripled in the last few years. Triple. That's a lot. I'm sorry, Mr. Boulris. I have a point of order, Madame Lalonde. Please turn on your mic, Madame Lalonde. Oh, I'm sorry. I have a lot of respect for my colleague, Mr. Boulris. But I just wanted to see, to know if what he's saying is relevant to the motion that we're studying right now. Of course, Mr. Boulris is talking about the tabling of a bill which has some kind of link to the official languages, of course. But I would ask Mr. Boulris to put questions that are directly linked to the motion we're studying. You still have 1 minute, Mr. Boulris. I just wanted to say that I want to defend the rights of the Francophones and the services in French languages. I see that my colleague, Mr. Angus, is there, and I would like to give him a few minutes left in my turn. Yes, Mr. Angus, you have only 45 seconds. Please, go ahead.
Madame Jolie, thank you. My question is simple. Mr. Haché said there were multiple meetings with the federal government, but you said you didn't meet with them. So did Mr. Lefebvre let you know that they were facing bankruptcy? Because that's what Mr. Haché told us. They were in crisis, and after the meetings, they had to make the decision to go into bankruptcy. So who told you that they were in crisis, or were you not told?
I was not told.
25 seconds,
Okay.
please.
I was not told, and if I had been told, I would have clearly called the province to find a solution.
I believe you. But so Mr. Lefebvre was speaking with them in December. You said that he was the contact person. I just wanted to confirm that.
He contacted my office in January to talk about it.
Thank you.
Okay, merci beaucoup. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next round will be 5 minutes. Mr. Dalton, you have the floor. Good afternoon, Madam Minister. I believe in miracles. We have seen an incredible miracle today. 5 million announced just before our meeting. And that's really nice. It's encouraging. But as far as I'm concerned, it shows that this government it shows that the government it could be doing a lot more than what it is doing to help these institutions. I have a couple of questions. Your government is open to helping students, French-speaking and bilingual, to go on to post-secondary institutions. But you put other priorities first. You've used words such as pushing other governments, Kenny, more, putting the pressure. So to me, this is all politics. So I'm wondering why you're saying that this is always conditional. Why don't you put the money on the table here without condition? Well,
We do not have a problem with Dennis King, with Nova Scotia, with Newfoundland. We have not had a problem with Manitoba, Saskatchewan, with Yukon, Nunavut, Northwest Territories. And we have not had a problem with the Horgan government in BC. We just have a problem with governments that have cut funding to their university programs when that directly impacts Francophone communities. So it's not politics, Mr. Dalton. It's that we are faced with decisions that have an impact on linguistic rights in the country. And unfortunately, this has too often been the case in our country. And that is why we as a federal government must act to protect linguistic rights. I take my role as a defensor of linguistic rights very seriously. And you talked about the miracle of $5 million. I would just like to confirm that there will be a number of other miracles because $121.3 million more were allocated in the budget. So I will be pleased to announce them to you in the future. Okay, thank you. Minister, the federal government allocates funding directly to universities all the time. A few months ago, your own parliamentary secretary announced $45 million for McGill for certain projects that were not matched by another government. You can do that if you want to do that, can't you? So that does not have to do with official languages. That was really based on research chairs. And research chairs fall under the innovation department. And these are peers, researchers in the country. They're the ones who decide which research will be invested in. There's an application process. That's how it works. It's like the Canada Council for the Arts, which is completely neutral and independent from the government. But in our team, it goes through bilateral agreements and it goes through funding for small infrastructure projects. And when I say small projects, it's rare for us to reach $5 million. May I continue? Yes. Shouldn't there be leadership by your government for teaching, for minority language teaching? You do not need another government at the table to take $10 million to Loblaws. Even if grocery stores do not fall under federal jurisdiction. Mr. Chair, point of order. That has nothing to do with the issue before the committee. Well, Mr. Dalton, I hold you in high esteem. I know that you were a provincial politician before. You have significant experience, so I know that you understand that that question was probably out of line. Yes, Mr. Blaney, point of order. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to come back to Mr. Bouleri's question. It was very relevant. We know that in the white paper, commitments were made for post-secondary education, and that's what we're talking about today. What we want is for the federal government to assume a leadership role. So Mr. Bouleri's question was very relevant, and so was Mr. Dalton's, to ask why doesn't the minister allocate funds unilaterally? And I have a question that might rub my Liberal colleagues the wrong way. But the question remains, and it's very valid, why the federal government is not assuming its leadership role. That was my point of order, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I understand, but I made my intervention earlier after Mr. Bouleri's question, and I said that we were talking about tabling an act, and that does have some connection to the issue at hand today. But now we were getting into Loblaws and so forth, and I will ask all of you to please stick to today's agenda. That is post-secondary education. So we will continue to that effect. Mr. Godin, another point of order? Yes, Mr. Chair. As parliamentarians, I believe that we can use context to lead us up to the main subject, and I think that that is a right that we have as parliamentarians. And I hope that our colleagues in the party in power can respect that. Understood. Well, the committee is working well together as usual, and we are debating an extremely important topic today. On this note, Mr. Serré has the floor for the next 5 minutes. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Minister, especially for your support in Northern Ontario, supporting Francophones, and also a big thank you for your dedication to being at the table to find a solution for Laurentian University. And a big thanks as well for the construction of the Place des Arts in Sudbury for the Francophone community. I'm a graduate of Laurentian. It's a wonderful university, even though I'm floored by the April 12th cuts. Families, teachers, students are all impacted. And Minister, often at this committee, we talk about responsibility and roles. My question is, what is your group doing to create the Ontario French Language University? Thank you for the question. I have had the opportunity to speak to a number of groups who are interested in actually strengthening the University of Sudbury. The community leaders must communicate and organize themselves together to come up with a solution because they are a minority. And I also advise them to talk to people like Carole Jolin at the AFO, and the various leaders who are involved in post-secondary education. It's very important to take a concerted approach. The Ontario French Language University was created because there was unanimous consent around the question. And that led to the community being able to present a project. And that is why we are putting $5 million on the table. That's why we are earmarking those funds, because we want for there to be trust in the fact that even if we have conversations, even if not everyone is in agreement at the outset, we're there. Our aid is on the table. When it comes to universities, expertise is required. Significant work is required. And that is why we wanted to be able to provide this financial relief. Excellent. Thank you for the answer. Mr. Angus is an MP from Northern Ontario, and I would like to reiterate that we know that Laurentian University had its involvement with the Companies Creditors Arrangement Act, and since 2015, we have been working closely with Laurentian University. No one in the community, including myself, believed that the university would go before the courts. We're hearing from the opposition that we were aware that it's not true. This is strictly politics being done on the backs of university professors, on the backs of students. Is there anything that we can do as a federal government to stop this court process? No, of course not, because the courts are independent and the judicial system is independent. But when I spoke to Rector Haché for the first time, it was in April, and I asked him, why didn't you come to us? Why didn't you talk to us? We could have worked with you. And I asked him, did you speak to the province? And he said, yes. The province was well aware. Anyway, this is a decision that was made by the province, essentially to push Laurentian University towards its recourse with the Companies Creditors Arrangement Act. And that is what I find unfortunate. Now the damage is done and we need to be in solution mode. That's why it will be my pleasure to work with my two counterparts, because we need to respond to this. When the Franco-Ontario University was created, it was the first time that there was an institution for and by Francophones in Ontario, and we're capable of having a second one. Thank you very much, Minister. We must continue to find solutions, and I know you continue to assist our Francophones and post-secondary institutions. Thank you, Mr. Serré. That is all the time that you have. As the clerk and the analyst let us know, we only have 2.5-minute question rounds left because the minister has to leave us. So first we have Mr. Beaulieu and then Mr. Boulris. 2.5 minutes for Mr. Beaulieu. Yes, thank you. I will be quick. Minister, earlier you refused to comment on underfunding for post-secondary institutions by the federal government, saying that this does not fall under your department. But you gave the example of Bishop University and Laval University and the grants given there. I asked you a question. The Quebec government is asking for positive measures with Quebec's consent, and there is a whole slew of requests regarding modernization of the Official Languages Act. Can you name me one Quebec request that you agree with? Well, there are various ones that I agree with. There are a number supporting minority Francophone communities. But I would talk to you about underfunding for English language universities in Quebec, but just ask the question to the Parti Québécois leader. He went to Laval University, why he had the right to go to an English language university in Quebec. Even he considers that there should be equal funding. I can give you many examples of graduates. Well, yes, that would be easy, but you have named absolutely no measures. You're just talking about general principles. You say, yes, we want to defend French, but when it's time to act, so when it comes to federally regulated companies, we will come to an agreement with the Quebec government. I just have one more question. So the whole Official Languages Action Plan for Quebec only aims to fund English in various ways. English language organizations, that's not true. We give $6 million every year to the Quebec government. When it comes to official languages, one at a time, please. You have 15 seconds. Please go ahead, Mr. Beaulieu, and I'll answer your question. When I asked the question on official languages programs, you answered by talking about culture, etc., and you didn't want to answer about funding to universities. You said it doesn't fall under your department. Now I'm asking you, when it comes to official languages, what will you do to defend French? In 10 seconds, please, Minister. Well, when it comes to modernizing the OLA, we will recognize Francophone immigration. $600 million go to Quebec every year to teach French to immigrants. That's first. Second of all, we have many other cultural levers. There's Téléfilm Canada, Radio-Canada, CBC, many other institutions to strengthen French in Quebec. Thank you very much, Minister, and thank you, Mr. Beaulieu. Just before Mr. Boulris takes the floor, I would also like to remind everyone that Mr. Racine and Ms. Boyer will stay for another 30 minutes. Mr. Boulris, 2.5 minutes.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I would like to speak to you as a graduate from Montreal University as well as McGill University. So, Madam Minister, maybe that is an example you could use in your future statement. Now, the bankruptcy of Laurentian University, isn't it an indicator on the programs for Francophones in the north of Ontario and in Ontario in general? But doesn't it also reveal an underfunding of all our post-secondary education in Canada? I'm saying this because this is a question that was put to me through the Association of University Teachers in Canada, who are afraid that this might be just a first warning sign, that is the first example that we see towards a privatization of our post-secondary education. What do you think about that statement? Well, there are two aspects. Of course, universities, especially universities that are serving official language communities, have been hit by the pandemic. So they need various funds, source of funds, and, for example, foreign students, but also different types of revenues. So when there are no students on the campus, the revenues fall short. Revenues associated, for example, to various food concessions or any other type of revenue. So this did weaken the whole system, and this is why we have granted 121.3 million, because we knew that there was a problem. We wanted to have a solution, so we did allocate those funds. And the other aspect, I believe that we need to make sure that we have provisions to protect these institutions. This is why we included that in the Official Language Act. I think that's the question you were asking. That's why we want to have that in the future bill. It's important that we recognize that post-secondary institution is vital for minority communities. Now, we don't create a university just like that, as you said earlier. I quite agree with that. There are programs that might be abolished. For example, the program to the midwives program of Laurentian University. Will you commit to defend the survival of Francophone programs in general, but particularly of that program, because that is a unique program in Ontario. Yes, and I did discuss that with Ms. Adar this morning. So we're trying to find solutions, and I'm ready to put some money on the table to help out in that specific case. Thank you very much, Madam Minister. I would like to thank you also of your presence at the Committee of Official Languages, and thank you for your contribution. I know that you have to leave us, so we will continue with Ms. Julie Boyer, who is Assistant Deputy Minister of Official Languages, Heritage and Region, and Mr. Racine, who are already here, Official Language Directorate. Thank you. So we don't need to change anything. We can just continue with the meeting if the clerk agrees. So we will continue. The next minutes, we will have Mr. Godin. Thank you. I would like to use the opportunity to thank her for her presence, thank the minister for her presence. And if I can qualify that minister, the minister is available, and that's quite government measures and actions is something else, but I would like to thank Ms. Joly for her commitment, and I hope that the message will reach her. I'd like to ask a question to Mr. Racine and Ms. Boyer. I would like to understand. So Minister Joly mentioned earlier, and we've heard that in the media, that there was an amount of $5 million that there is an intention to help out Laurentian University. Now, several times since the situation deteriorated to a catastrophic state, and I'd like to use my colleague Lefebvre's expression, who very knows the situation. So everywhere it was mentioned since the very beginning that it is not the responsibility of the federal government. I mean, it is always the responsibility of the provincial government. Now, is she being too fast in giving or granting $5 million? So what is the role of the minister? What is the role of official languages? Now, isn't the federal government now making a mistake in promising $5 million? I don't know. Well, I can maybe start with my response, and then I'll give my colleague the opportunity to follow up. I think what is important is the mandate or the jurisdiction in education, which is the responsibility of the provinces. So when we negotiated the agreement protocol that covers the period until 2023, we did agree on specific parameters for cooperation. And we repeated and we recognized that education is an exclusive competency jurisdiction of the provinces. So we need to work with the province to reach an agreement regarding the support. So maybe Denis can follow up on my response. There might be one element that is of importance. As the minister pointed out, and as Julie pointed out also, education is a provincial jurisdiction, territorial jurisdiction. It is important to ensure that we have initiatives coming from the provinces. The way the programs exist, official language programs exist, mean that we cannot directly fund post-secondary education. We have to go through the province. So this means that the province will submit a proposal about specific projects, programs, which are aimed towards post-secondary education. So this is the type of partnership that we require. However, there have been some indication. Last February, it was quite clear that the Laurentian University was having major problems. So I understand that education is a provincial jurisdiction. However, I also understand that respecting official languages is a federal responsibility. Madam Minister today decides to give $5 million and accuses quite frequently provincial governments or territorial governments. Wouldn't it have been possible for you as administrators to initiate, to show leadership in that case? Because the first mission and priority is to protect and to promote official languages. So I am just wondering why there has not been any specific action before today so as to act and to put pressure. I mean, I understand that provincial governments have other concerns, but that's their problem. Now, the federal government has a responsibility that is to promote official languages. Why hasn't there been any leadership from the federal government in that regard? 30 seconds, please. Now, regarding the Department of Heritage, we're always in touch with our colleagues from the provinces. So when this question, that is when we were alerted of the situation, we started a dialogue, and we are still discussing this with the province to encourage them, first, to identify the solution, and second, to indicate to us what the financial assistance required from the federal government would be to implement that solution. However, we are in a constant dialogue with the province of Ontario, as we also are with the other provinces in the framework of bilateral agreements we have with them. Now, I would like to, Mr. Godin, the next 5 minutes, Mr. Lefebvre. Thank you, Mr. Chair. A brief question, Mr. Hassien. Before February 1st, did the province, the Department of Education, communicated with you to receive assistance for Laurentian University? No, we did not receive a specific request for Laurentian University. We know that within bilateral agreements with Ontario, there was funding allocated for post-secondary education. Part of that was going to go to Laurentian University. We did not receive a specific request from the province regarding the situation you have mentioned. So how much is going to Laurentian University from the federal through the province? Now, according to the last protocol, we had a global amount for post-secondary education. However, in the last year, we had amounts for post-secondary education. I'm looking at my notes here, if I can find that. I would say it was 1.9 million, if I'm not mistaken, that went directly to Laurentian University in 18-19. Mr. Godin, I would like to clarify something. What about Heritage Canada? Can Heritage Canada fund post-secondary education through its program? Now, Laurentian University, University of Moncton, St. Jean campus, can they ask for funding for their operations? There are two elements to my response. Because education is a provincial jurisdiction, it is not possible for us to fund expenses of the province. So whether it be administrative or operational expenses, we cannot finance that because that's a provincial responsibility. However, within the programs of official languages, we can collaborate with the provinces to help them to improve the programming, to develop new programs, and to strengthen recruiting initiatives. So these are just a few examples because we recognize specific needs of French language minorities. Now, in a typical year, what would be the percentage of the total amount used by provinces to support post-secondary institutions? Well, that varies from one province to the other. I was mentioning earlier that there were some funds for Laurentian University, 1.1 million, as I mentioned earlier. So it does vary from one province to the other and varies from one year to the other because we do have funds that will be transiting through bilateral agreements. We have additional funds that will fund special projects, that will fund projects that will last a specific time frame. So funding will vary from one year to the other, and there is no special formula. So we're not going to say that we promise everyone a specific amount. It's based on needs, based on initiatives that provinces are going to identify and that they are going to present to the department. So it's the province. So we give the funds and the province decides how they're allocated. Well, there are discussions with the provinces on action plans because the bilateral agreement, of course, are subject to action plans. So the province and the federal government need to agree on the action plan. So there is a basis of discussion over the initiatives that will require funding, and this will be shared by the federal and the provincial government. However, the province can, of course, decide to fund a given project at 100%. But when the federal government steps in, there are negotiations. Now, you mentioned 1.9 million to Laurentian. It was for 2019 and 2020. So that represents, it's not the university has a 200 million budget, so I don't think that your amount will actually cover all the needs. Now, the federal government could have maybe done a transfer of 100 million, but you say that's not possible because it's the province which needs to fund it, as the minister pointed out and as you pointed out. However, we have a role to play to ensure that our French language programs are strong. So it's a record amount, something we've never seen before. So I would say it's very important and helpful, but for us at Laurentian, it's too late. So the community is looking for a plan with local stakeholders to make sure that the programs can go on. Thank you, Mr. Lefebvre. It's the time. Your time's up. Let's go to Mr. Blaney for 5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Essentially, it's very clear. Yes, we understand that money needs to transit through the province. So my question for Mr. Racine is going to be very simple. What about, now if the province presents a 5 million project, can the money transit through the province to go to Laurentian University to save that university? Well, you mean the money needs to transit through the province or can transit? Yes. So that's always following a proposal from the province. Thank you. It's very clear. So the federal government can take 5 million, can go through the province and help out the community. Now, if the Liberal government wants to do politics and attach conditions, well, that's normal. We're politicians. But you did respond to my question. So the federal government can send 5 million to Laurentian University through the province if the province presents a plan.
We talked about the white paper on official languages, and the minister said that she wanted to recognize the existence and the importance of post-secondary institutions for the vitality of the communities. Can you tell us if a bill could be tabled? I know that the question was put to the minister, but she wasn't able to answer. We, the Conservatives on the committee, we are ready to adopt an act to modernize, which we've been talking about since 2016. Is there going to be tabled before the end of June? I cannot answer to that question. Yes, of course, this is a political question. I'm sorry, Mr. Racine, if this has been embarrassing. I could not ask the question of the minister, so I asked you. Now, it is important for us, for the federal government to play its leadership role. Do you have examples to give us where the federal government has supported post-secondary institution without having an equal funding from the province? There are many examples of the government federal funding post-secondary institution, but you have to remember one principle. The main condition for this matching, it is the 50-50. but very often there are projects where the province will fund more than the federal government. It varies, but in each province, territory, whether it is the French program in the Simon Fraser, whether it is the campus Saint-Jean or the Université de Saint-Boniface, there is federal funding which is given to the post-secondary institution through the bilateral agreements that we talked about. So there is flexibility on both sides. A province may put in more, or it can be the federal government that puts more. But as regards the 121 million which has been budgeted, we've talked a lot about the continuum. We know that the federal government is more implicated in the secondary and primary, but now we feel that there is a need at the preschool and the post-secondary levels. So in this 121 million, is there going to be amounts that are specifically for preschool and post-secondary? There are two elements to your question. First, the funds in the budget are earmarked for post-secondary education. That is clearly stated in our budget. When we sign the last memorandum with the provinces, we recognize this education continuum. So now we recognize that the preschool and post-secondary are included in the continuum. Will there be sums to encourage English school boards to offer French immersion? Well, this is, I'm sorry, I'm talking about all the provinces. For example, the English-speaking provinces, are there sums for immersion? There has been 184 million in the last federal budget to teach the second language, and that includes immersion programs, of course. Thank you, Mr. Blaney. 5 minutes, and Mr. Lefebvre. Mr. Chair, it's Mr. Serry who will have the floor. Very well, Mr. Serry. Go ahead. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to continue in this vein. The minister said that 253 million were given to the province of Ontario. And, of course, there is 141 million for the PLO. Can you explain to me what is included in this 253 million given to the province of Ontario? As regards Ontario, for 21-22, the current year, Ontario will invest more than 350 million for the teaching in the minority language, and the government will give 83 million. The funding provided by the province is larger than what the federal government is giving, because the province pays for the school boards, operations, and everything, and the federal aid comes as a supplement to that. And these sums are given for the primary and secondary, and also there's a part for post-secondary. You said earlier that you were having discussions right now with the province of Ontario, and you said that you had not received proposals before February 2nd, when the university had to invoke the Act, the Creditors Arrangement Act. I represent 45% of the population of Sudbury, so I have a certain interest in this. We talked to the minister. We've provided important funding, but what is the dialogue right now with this province? Do you have? Did you get any plan or proposal from the province? As the minister said, the program that they have that has been eliminated is so important, and it was provided at the Laurentian University. So I would like to know what you've done and what you got from the province. As regards the Laurentian universities and education in general, we discuss with the province. But as regards the university as such, I cannot talk about what the province will do. But what it says is that there is a process going on with the university, and the province will have to find solutions to this situation. We've said to the province at the civil servant levels that we were expecting a proposal, some kind of proposal, so that we can look at it quickly and collaborate in order to guarantee that there is quality post-secondary education in the north of Ontario. So this solution, no solution has been proposed. The province has said that they would not propose a solution while there is something before the court. Yes, I believe that there are some stages that have to be gone through, and these stages must be completed before they look at the situation. But they are the best situation to give you answers. Will the Auditor General look at this and see that are there financial reports? Yes, under the bilateral agreements, we do get financial reports. With the new memorandum, we get a much more detailed financial report, and we see where the investments are made. And to this day, there have not been concerning situations, cases where the funds were not properly dispensed. Thank you. As you know, the committees must close and on the hour. We still have 2.5 minutes for two people. We will start with Mr. Beaulieu, followed by Mr. Boulris. Mr. Beaulieu, 2.5 minutes. Well, to complete the line of questioning of Mr. Blaney, I'm wondering if the government has ever said, well, there is $5 million available for post-secondary education in French without demanding a matching $5 million from the province. In education, the official languages programs are based on collaboration with the provinces, and there is cost sharing 50-50. So this is what the province would have to give as well. Earlier, I asked a question of the minister about research grants. If education comes under provincial jurisdiction, all these grants must come under federal-provincial agreements? Well, the criteria will vary according to the department. We are not the only ones who give grants. There are other departments at the federal level that do this as well. But the programs may differ and may have different criteria. And so the department is empowered to give direct grants to university in other departments. But for us, at official languages, it has to be 50-50. Very well. The minister answered to my question and said that there were grants, for example, to Bishop University. Was there a federal-provincial agreement for this? We collaborate with Quebec as we do with all the other provinces in this regard, and there is funding that went through the bilateral agreement with the province of Quebec in this regard. So this means that in general, all the funds that go to the English institutions come under federal provincial agreements. Yes. Thank you. And the last will be Mr. Boulris. Thank you. Thank you, Monsieur Racine and Madame Boyer, for being with us today. I'm trying to understand here, because we're talking a lot about matching. The federal can help if the province helps as well. But on the other hand, I hear that sometimes it happens. For example, with the Université de l'Ontario Français, the federal government can act alone. So I'm trying to understand, which is it? Is it a must for the government, the province, to put the money in? As regards the Laurentian University and the Université de l'Ontario Français, there was an agreement 50-50 with the province of Ontario. As regards the Université de l'Ontario Français, the federal government said that it would give its money in the 4 first years, and that Ontario would come afterwards and would pay 100% of the cost for the following 4 years. So in the end, it's 50-50. But it's more or less an advance that is made by the federal government. It has been admitted by the federal government will give the first 4 years, and the province has committed itself to provide 100% of the funding required for the next 4 years. I see that Madame Lalonde is very happy with your answer on this. I would like to know what is your plan for Campus Saint-Jean in Edmonton. Well,
we communicated to the province saying that we hoped that we would have 2 proposals to address the Saint-Jean campus situation. Reducing operating funds for the University of Alberta on the provincial side, but we really opened the door wide to hearing any and all proposals that could be acceptable to rectify the situation. Thank you, Mr. Racine. And that's where our meeting draws to a close. This was the first of our 4 sittings on our post-secondary institution study. There will be 6 witnesses on Thursday. They have already confirmed their attendance. I would now like to take the opportunity to thank our witnesses for their contribution to this study. Ms. Julie Boyer, Assistant Deputy Minister at Official Languages, Heritage and Regions. And thank you to Denis Racine, Director General of the Official Languages Branch. On behalf of all committee members and myself aussi, I would like to thank the clerk and analysts and the whole technical team working with us for this sitting. The meeting is adjourned.